Hey everybody, Kris Gethin here, and welcome to another episode of the Knowledge and Mileage podcast. I am here on my treadmill desk at home because we all know how important it is to have low-level activity as part of your day today. But don't worry, that's just not the subject matter of this podcast. This podcast is something that is going to be very, very different for you today, very unexpected. However, I know for a fact this is something that everybody needs to listen to very carefully, to the fact that you do probably need to get a notepad and pen, because the other person that I have on the end of the line here from Boise as well is my financial advisor, and there is nobody smarter than this gentleman here. Thank you ever so much for coming on to the show, Mr. Brian Wiley. I actually first got to know you by being on your podcast or your radio show to begin with. That was quite funny. And here we are now, you're on my podcast.
That's right. You know what? I guess great minds think alike. You know, there's all kinds of different health out there. You've got the physical and the nutritional health part of it, and I've got the financial part of it.
Yeah, and this is where you really show your strengths, because I know my weaknesses. I double down on my strengths. And look, when it comes to finances, I have no idea. I can get the money in if I so wish to. Yeah. Can I manage it? Probably not. And you have done an amazing job with handling my finances, because I have them coming in from different areas and it can be quite the mess. So Could you just tell us a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and then we'll get straight into the show.
Sure. I'm actually a licensed financial advisor. I own a firm out in Boise, Idaho called Tree City Advisors. I've been in the business for a little over 20 years. I broadcast 5 nights a week on a local station, broadcast by Cumulus Radio. It's called The Real Money Pros. In fact, you can visit the website, hear the archives at therealmoneypros.com. It's 5 nights a week, 6 to 7 p.m. local time. I also broadcast a program out in Fresno, California on KMJ, which is another Cumulus radio station. That one's heard on Sundays at 2 p.m. That one's called The Real Money Pro, singular. My local show, it's a collaborative effort. We've got a CPA, we have an estate planning attorney. We also have insurance experts and other experts in mortgages and real estate that will talk about their fields of expertise. I've learned after 20 years that I'm really good at one thing, which is connecting to people and identifying and triaging a financial mess. And so I practice that on the air. I believe very strongly in building pictures in people's minds so they can understand something that does not need to be complicated.
Yeah, and you definitely simplify it for me, which is needed. I need the layman's terms. But what I love about what you do is that you share so much of your knowledge. Like, you are on the cutting edge. You've created software for people internationally, or people such as myself as well, that can really, invest money wisely and have the software kind of do the hard work for you. And obviously throughout, your radio shows and your podcasts, you share a lot of valuable information as well. Now, this moment in time is kind of hectic. It's crazy, as I know it is for you at the moment, with all hundreds of your clients. Yeah. And I'm happy to report that you do have a full head of hair now. Let's see where that leads in a couple of months' time. But, there's some crazy economic effects that are happening right now. How are they rattling the world?
Well, I mean, clearly the entire world's going to have different effects on their local economies and how it's going to affect their people. But consumerism is obviously taking a dive right now. You don't have the ability to get out into Best Buy and in some cases even make it to a gym. So there are some businesses that are going to thrive during this period, but there's many businesses, and I would say this is certainly not fairly weighted, because most businesses are going to suffer. When it comes to suffering, of course, that's going to translate into job losses and financial strife for people. One of the things that you are trying to talk about right now is how do we lock ourselves up in our home and stay healthy, eat well, still being able to keep your body moving. But when you add the feeling of financial loss to it, whether it's through equity in your home or it's through your investments going down in stock markets that you may or may not understand, it can just add to that worry. And that worry itself can also stop people from being on a treadmill like you are right now, because they're so caught up in it.
Yeah, interesting. And it's funny how, we're all trying to predict what is going to happen. We're thinking, what is going to happen with this virus? Is it going to continue spread? Is it going to get worse? And it's funny how we can actually use the stock market to a certain degree as a prediction machine. How does that work?
Well, if you think about it, let's just think about something really simple, which is you've got a large retailer out there that requires people to walk in to buy their goods. If nobody can walk in to buy their goods, that retailer has got some fixed costs, whether it's their building and equipment or it's just the inventory that's sitting on the shelves. But if you have employees, now that employer's got to make some tough decisions, which is, do you send the employees home? If you send them home, are you laying them off? Are you still paying them? If you're not paying them any longer, then of course that retailer itself will try to keep their cash handy. So the stock market is looking at that retailer and trying to get an idea of how many days can that retailer supply its cash needs and make it, and will it survive when it comes out the other side of this? We have no idea when this coronavirus, COVID-19 ordeal is going to end. But we do know that right now in some localities, like we are right now, we're quarantined. We're here to stay in our homes. I'm in my office. I'm the only person here right now. Everybody else is working from home. But my business suffers from it as well. We're tied to the values of the stock market. And right now, the stock market is predicting a long period of an economic loss, or what we would call a recession, maybe even a depression out the other side of this. And the stock market itself is investors looking at profitability at companies. And if there is no future profitability, then guess what? The stock price is going to go down. So it's a prediction tool. It's not a bet. Some people say it's a bet, but it's actually buying into the future earnings of a company. And if the company doesn't have any near-term future earnings, then of course its stock price is going to plummet.
Interesting, yeah. And when you're talking about retailers, we're all kind of just thinking about the mom and pop shops, but this could be like a cruise liner, for instance, because nobody's actually taking cruises or anything like that right now. But if we're looking at the stocks, for instance, are we, looking at now? Okay, we're trying to predict the future. These are the companies that it's, obviously causing a stress. But if these companies are large enough to see through to the other end, and again, that's just another predictor, I'm assuming these are the companies that we should be looking to invest in should we have the cash to transfer from one portal to another.
Yeah, sure. I mean, really, we don't know who's been swimming naked until the tide goes out, right? So we're going to find out who these companies are that didn't have enough cash sitting aside. And you've got really large companies like the cruise lines that you just brought up. And right now, I think we all think of those as floating petri dishes, and it's not a good place to send a senior. They are the most susceptible to this disease, but there's not a lot of people that can travel, let alone want to travel right now. And so the leisure industry is going to be the hardest hit industry for some period of time. But you look at the airline industry, which is critical for business operations to be able to send employees out for remote business meetings, whatever it might be, just to conduct business, but now they can't do it. Of course, you got the airlines that are in deep trouble. You've got the United States and many nations now supporting their local airline industries with some sort of stimulus money. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that's profitable to the companies. It just means they've got cash to be able to sit on the sidelines, because we need that industry to be revived at the end of this and to be vibrant at the end of this. So we can look at the stock values themselves and either get wrapped up in worry, or we can look at the stock values and say, all right, what's the chance they're going to come out of the other end of this, and how well will they do it? Well, that's why the market is making some just giant swings in value. Just today alone, down over 4.5%. But then you had days like 2 days ago where you saw the market up 10%. And so this is a very emotional time in the markets, and it will expose those who understand it versus who don't understand it. It would be very similar to going to a gym and looking at a machine and being afraid of the machine itself, because you don't really understand what that machine's purpose is for you and what the benefits are going to be for your body. But as soon as somebody sits down, a good trainer like you, Kris, that shows you how to use it properly, well, it sheds light on it, takes away from the fear, and it will get you to start to use it. I think the stock markets themselves are based on fear and greed. And when you add those two emotions to it, people will do something that you can't calculate. They'll do something very emotional. There's no formula for emotions. When it comes to investing, I've encouraged people to be indifferent to their stocks, be indifferent to their investments. It's a tool. It's like a barbell sitting in the gym. When that barbell no longer weighs 20 pounds, then you get rid of that barbell. Maybe it breaks. Get rid of it. Go get a new one. It's a tool. When people get emotionally tied to the values of their accounts or emotionally tied to a company, they are bound to lose, and they're bound to actually give money to the people who are strategic about their investments themselves. And so this is one of those things where we want to shed light on the industry, help people better understand it. And one of the mantras that I have after doing radio for 20 years, and of course, 6 days a week in this case, is I want people to understand that they just need to learn about it. Once they learn about it, the fear goes away.
Right. And I guess you're dealing with a lot of clients that have fear at the moment. So
absolutely,
you're probably just as much as a life coach as a financial advisor.
Probably more so, to be honest with you. The money part of it's easy. As I've always said, my industry it's a little dubious. I'm not real proud of my industry, but since I've been doing radio, you got to remember that even out of 1,000 listeners, the majority of those people, probably 999 of them, are not in my industry, and they're confused by it. Our industry takes advantage of that. In fact, when I was first trained in the industry over 20 years ago, we were told to try to confuse the client to the point where they felt like they needed us. I don't think that is a good relationship. Needing something or needing somebody is a position of weakness. Let's make it so they want us. It's like having a tree outside. I know how to trim the tree, but maybe I want to sit inside with a cup of coffee and watch somebody else trim the tree. Maybe they'll do a better job. Maybe it's just worth it to me to have them trim the tree for me. That's a position of want, not need. And when it comes to the stock markets, it's very basic. It's just somebody selling and somebody buying, and that's it. The question is do you want to be a part of it?
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Good answer. Good answer. So obviously, we spoke on the phone yesterday. You're helping me with my finances at the moment. Hopefully I'm one of your easier customers to deal with. Yeah. I like to be as calm as a cucumber.
Yeah.
Give me some of the examples of what you're dealing with right now. I know there's a lot of people out there that they don't have disposable income, or they do, they don't know what to do with it. What sort of people are you dealing with at the moment? Can you give us a couple of examples so our listeners could kind of relate possibly to a situation that they're in?
Sure. In fact, what I'm dealing with right now are people who didn't plan ahead. When we have some sort of a plan, it'd be like going and having a nutritional plan. If you have a nutritional plan, it also means that you have an end goal. If you have an end goal, then that means that you can work toward it, because you don't just start with great nutrition, lose 100 pounds the first month. This is something that takes time. If you had a goal to lose 100 pounds, it may take you 2 years to do it, but that daily nutritional plan becomes key. And then, of course, also your activity plan, what you're doing to keep your body moving, and how you're going to actually attain that goal. It's no different with finances. You've got to give it time. The markets themselves are built for time. In fact, when we look at these graphs and they're going up and down, we take these big ones, a lot of people will focus on that big market decline, forgetting that their goal was way out here. And if the goal's out there, you got to give it time. Now, what some people will do is they'll invest money trying to think that they're going to make a quick return. They lose it, they panic, and they've blown it. That's the case. In fact, sometimes we just can't fix it. In some cases, we can look at it, be able to recover it, maybe back off a little bit, understanding risk and time and objectives and things like that. And then when you invest money, you don't want to invest with greed. You just want to invest with a purpose, a goal. Time is related to it. And of course, the amount of the goal is very important. And it just step by step, you've got to get there. And I believe very strongly that there are many different areas of health. You've got financial health, you've got physical health, you've got emotional health and spiritual health, but you also have to have nutritional and activities and things like this. Now, it rounds it out. Now, sometimes somebody is just a full-blown athlete, but they're horrible with their finances, and wait till their finances melt. Well, then they may become not such a great athlete. There's times where I've been in the top of my game. I was almost an athlete, you'd say, in the financial world. And what I'm realizing is that money actually is not the end-all, cure-all for anything. Either is just nutritional health. I mean, it's something that has to be part of a pie to round out the circle. And once you get that, then you can actually have some sort of very healthy outcomes that come out of this. And you're probably more likely to attain your financial goals and your health goals if you've got health in all of those areas, to include spiritual health. I mean, wherever it is that you get your peace, we've got to focus on that. And of course, that can also be helpful with getting people through very volatile market times like this.
Yeah. And this is one of the main reasons why I wanted you on the show, Brian, because this is fascinating that a lot of people don't think about.
Right.
Okay, we're not trying to be multimillionaires. Well, not all of us. But we don't want to have the stress or the financial burden of not knowing if we have another paycheck coming in, or if it's going to meet the expectations to allow us to stay stress-free, or for us to seek adventure as we want to, because that's part of our health. It contributes to it because we're not dealing then with cortisol levels, sleepless nights, anxiety, stress of trying to provide for ourselves or our family. This is all an encompassing, like, part of that three-legged stool. If you've only got two legs on that stool, that stool is definitely going to topple over. And I think this is pivotal. We do want to have some sort of financial freedom so we can take off the stress and focus on the things that we want out of life, And now, just switching gears a little bit about the stock market volatility now that we're dealing with. How is that having how would I word this? An issue with people's personal financial goals at the moment?
Well, it's kind of like how we're dealing with the coronavirus right now. And while you can be healthy, it doesn't make you cavalier about it, right? So you've spent a lot of time with nutritional and physical health, and you think, well, this is my best defense against this virus or getting sick. Well, when it comes to finances, your best defense is to not need the money that's tied up in the markets, because you've already shored up your emergency reserves, and maybe you've worked on how much debt you're willing to have, and you're dinging that down. These little tiny successes are it's kind of like the little light right here on the back of my phone. Yeah. It's a tiny light, but if I flip off the lights in this room, it will light up the wall. It's fine tuning, and that fine tuning comes together to be able to give people some peace and some wellness finance-wise, to understand why the volatility in the markets is actually good for them. This is kind of an odd thing, but you and I talked about it yesterday, which is, Kris, you're a young guy. You're a healthy guy. You're going to work for many more years. You've got the ability to weather a stock market storm. In fact, maybe even viewing it a separate way, which is take advantage of these low prices and allow time to be the answer, because incrementally you're going to get yourself there. Now, where you invest the money in the markets might be another part of the question. We don't want to overweight to anything. It's like having too many arm days and not any leg days. So we want to make sure that we're spreading all this out. The most important thing that I can explain to people would be like taking a very young child, out into a dark garage that they've never been into. Well, as soon as the door closes behind you and the lights are black, that child's hand is going to grip your hand and they are not going to let go. But as soon as you turn around and flip the light on, they know where all the dangerous stuff is, and they're going to go around and start playing with stuff. It doesn't mean they're completely safe, but just understanding where the dangers are and that preparation itself, just by being able to see it, takes away a lot of the worry for both the person holding the child's hand and, of course, the child themselves.
I love that. Love that analogy. And could you touch a little bit on this software as well that you've created? We've been speaking about that now for the past year as you've been creating this and putting that through beta testing. And it's phenomenal. Even I can use it now. Now, you're going to be able to describe it so much better than I. What is that, and how is that helping, and how can that help your potential customers?
Well, my objective here is that I believe that a lot of lower level investors, people who are getting started, and maybe even people who have been investing for years, are not starting in the right place. They're actually starting with just investing money without understanding the purpose of the money. So I've created a couple different softwares to help a do-it-yourself advisor to be able to get through that process without hiring and retaining somebody that might be a little bit more expensive. Because remember, I am a financial advisor. I do meet with people on a regular basis. I will manage their money, but I also help determine whether or not that person is capable of managing their own money. Now, tie that in with the radio program, and I talk to thousands of people every night. The majority of those listeners do not hire a person like me. I would say more than 60% of the crowd will never hire a financial advisor. And then when they do hire a financial advisor, the question is, did they start with a plan? Kris, I've asked you several times, will you help my son be a better ski racer? You said, well, what are his goals? He needs to have his goals established before you can start helping him establish some sort of a dietary plan and a workout plan. Otherwise, if you just go to the gym and start working out, even though you just know he's a skier, you might be ignoring the fact that he's got a back injury and maybe he's not real good to sticking with things, or he's got a sweet tooth. And so The investing software is in two pieces. One is I created one called InvestU with the letter U.com. And that one is for do-it-yourself investors who want to get their financial plan together first, because that's the first part. But at any point, they can bail out, say, I need help, and they will get help from a fiduciary advisor that will log in, look at their plan, consult with them, adjust it as needed, and help straighten out the plan so they can understand what their goals are and how to get there. The second piece is the investing piece, and that's the tricky part. Our industry is fraught with regulations. We've got a lot of people out there they're very difficult to trust, in my opinion. Whenever somebody is earning a commission off of something that is a result of advice, I would call that conflicted advice. Instead, I look at this as, Kris, would you buy me lunch for $20 a month and ask Brian, what should I do differently with my investments? And then I just give you the list and you go out there and execute your own trades. And my guess is yes, because you're just looking for a consultant on something you're perfectly capable of doing on your own. So I created another software set called freedomfolios.com. I'm just the first licensee. I make a whole bunch of model portfolios. In fact, I've even got one for the coronavirus. And those model portfolios are just designed for an investor to look at those, select their time horizon, and then just follow it. It's integrated with TD Ameritrade. If they decide to follow the trades to get back into alignment, they push a single button and all the sell orders and buy orders are sent to TD Ameritrade, and voila, in 5 seconds, you're back in alignment and you go back to the gym.
And just a tail end off that, one of the things that I really like about since I've been coming to your office, Brian, is that you've helped me manage my money, not just from an investment point of view, but from an income and outgoing point of view as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously the money would come in, but then I'm at the end of the month, I'm like, where did all that money go? So now you've helped me manage, okay, just don't go out of control when you do go on Amazon. Be mindful of how many times that you do potentially go out and eat, and maybe have a look at your supplement cabinet and maybe narrow it down a little bit to the absolute essentials, which has really helped you, because it's surprising. It's that bit by bit, much like it's that little cheat that really adds up, and you get to the end of the month, it's like, wow, £5? I didn't notice that a little bit day by day. So that is something that I think a lot of people can really learn, that it's just the devil is in the details a lot of the time as well.
That's true, because there's a couple things. One is, I would say that the majority of people that I meet with or interface with, the first thing I identify is that they pay too much in taxes. They're not aware of little loopholes or different things that they can do to reduce their tax load. Once we reduce the tax load, it adds cash flow back into their budget. And then that budget, oftentimes, second part, is that people will just blow the money. It's like buying lattes. I mean, do you really need to buy the $6 latte? There's a famous author out there. He's a financial author. I've had him on my program several times in the last 20 years. His name is David Bach. Last name spelled B-A-C-H. David Bach created what is known as the latte calculator, L-A-T-T-E calculator, as in the coffee. You go to the latte calculator, you put that in there, you see what your $5 a day is costing you and what it adds up. If you were to just cut that in half, maybe, for example, you just say, maybe I don't need to have it a $6 coffee. I'm happy with $2. Well, that $4 savings added up over time can, again, going back to that little light, shine on the wall. You just give it time and distance, and it makes a giant difference.
Yeah, I could see that. I actually have something on my phone, and it's called the countdown. So that tells me how many coffees I've got left, how many hours I've got left, how many weekends, how many holidays, dependent on what I've populated. And it's when you look at things like that, it's like, okay, wow, now I'm not just counting the reps here. I need to make sure that these reps count.
Yeah. It's a great way to relate what you do to what I do. As you know, it's like eating. You can sit down with a big bag of chips, and before you know it, you've got 400 calories down your throat. If you portioned it out and you said, I'm going to sit down and have 100 calories, which is a more reasonable amount, and call it junk food or not, maybe they're healthy chips for all that matters. But the point is it's the intake. And then, of course, what you're putting out. Well, mine is more focused on what's going out on the budget. And can we save on something? Can we set aside 300 calories or $300 in my world and put that to better use? Because right now we're looking at some opportunity in the market that I think could become one of the best opportunities for many investors if they just look at this a different way. Instead of looking at this as Well, here's another example. There's a big difference between an injury and being hurt. Being hurt in many cases stops people from getting back out there and trying it again. I had a giant mountain bike crash about 4 years ago, and I was hurt. It actually changed the way that I ride my bike, but an injury is different. This is maybe me riding a little bit too quickly through the trees and I get a branch to the shoulder. It hurts for a little while. That's an injury. What we're trying to do is to get people to not be financially hurt, because otherwise you may not go back to getting back into the markets and seeing this for what it is, which is opportunity. One, did I learn something from my injury? And second is, what am I going to do differently? We don't want to repeat the same things, of course, just like you wouldn't do. And that's really what I want people to understand is, do you see how obvious this one is? When the virus goes away, we can calculate pretty quickly what that store's losing on a daily basis. And we have a pretty good idea that the market has been very efficient in pricing in the worst case scenario. And if we can get people to stay home for 3 weeks, we can get over this sooner. And the sooner we can all become healthier. And that health has a lot to do with our financial health, and then how we take this injury and how we treat that as whether or not it's considered a hurt.
Interesting. Yeah. Let me ask you, because, we don't really know what to expect or believe when it comes to the media. Are you keeping a close ear into the media as well to ensure, okay, this is going to help me predict whether I should do this for myself or for my clients or anything else for that matter? So, like, for instance, I heard this morning that the UK went from a level 5 down to a level 4, which is good news. Yeah. Like, does something like that have an effect on you?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, 2 days ago, we had heard about a $2.2 trillion stimulus plan that is going to go through the House of Representatives in Washington today. Expected that President Trump will sign it into law. That is a little bit of a shot in the arm. The markets loved hearing that 2 days ago, and yesterday I liked it. But today is kind of curious because the market's selling off a little bit, even though that we know now that the House of Representatives will in fact pass it. Trump's going to sign it. So we have this old saying, which is buy on the rumor, sell on the news. Well, these little news events can infect it can infect and affect the markets. I can say that, but it causes people to be emotional. This last week has been a very interesting week. I had said it last night on a Thursday night that I felt that Friday morning was going to be the beginning of some selling activity, simply because people have made 20, 40, 50% in some positions just in the last 3 days. Why wouldn't you take that money off the table? Well, I'm not endorsing that. In fact, my opinion is let's invest, let's not trade. Traders will always they'll take losses. I've not seen too many successful ones over time. So instead of getting caught up in the news events, I am suggesting to people to just be systematic, keep going to the gym, keep eating well, keep putting in your time. It's the same thing with your 401ks, your IRAs, any other investments that you have. Regular contributions will ensure that you'll buy at some point at the bottom of the market, but it also means that you're going to have some purchases at the top of the market, and start ignoring the news. Every time I read a story, I will, in fact, go find an opposing story somewhere else from some other political view website. So if you're going to read, say, CNN, and then go do yourself a favor and at least read Fox Business News, you could hate both of them for all I care, but you've got to understand the bias of the authors out there and the fact that you're clickbait. I mean, we're clickbait right now. We're looking at these things, these big websites, these big news organizations. They're looking for a lot of people to view the story. So it starts with hyperbole right there in the title. And of course, they're going to build that up and try to get you to read the next story that's on that website. Be careful with that. Don't watch too much news. Be informed. There's no doubt about that. Understand what's going on in our world, but let's get rid of the fear. Let's work together. We're all in this together. It's a community. The stock markets don't need to be a mystery, and I certainly think that they don't need to be wrapped up in fear and greed.
Yeah, I totally agree with you 100%. It is good to be informed. However, when you know that the media can, to a certain degree, control the political front, because then the politicians come under so much pressure to do or say things that maybe they shouldn't, then you have to ask yourself, am I taking in content that is correct, or is it biased? Is it contradictory? It's usually all of the above.
Yeah, it usually is. As you know, even with Brexit, it was overblown about how impactful it was going to be. It became a very political story. You can look here in the United States. We've gone through multiple presidential administrations, and the naysayers are saying this one's going to destroy the economy, that one's going to destroy the economy. Well, guess what? We're a world of survivors. Every single person in this world needs to eat something today. They're going to eat something tomorrow. They're going to have a place where they need to sleep tonight. They want to have enjoyment in their lives. And I refuse to get caught up completely into the politics of this, but absolutely the politics, as soon as the coronavirus thing passes, we're going to go right back into politics. We're going to go right back into talking about our relations with other nations and things like that. None of it's good. It's not good on investors. It's meant to excite you. That is the purpose of it. And again, that hyperbole is what I want to get you away from. It's like, Kris, it's almost like every time a new diet comes out, if it has a name on it, it's a fad.
It's the name.
Yes.
The name.
Yeah, but the reality is that the good diets have always been good diets, and that's the reality. We might find some fine tuning on that good diet, but why are we sitting there worried about the fad or the politic news of that day or whatever the news headline is when the goal's 20 years out? Let's be realistic about this. Let's remove some of that worry.
Yeah, exactly. Like if we were to call, the various diets out there based on their macros, well, this is like 40% or it's 0% carbohydrates. It's not going to get your attention that much. And it's the same if we call the coronavirus a type of flu. Chances are it's not going to get the attention, much like Brexit. It's been given that name. People have shock because it's stamped, and we have that name. That can scaremonger people. So it's the titling that really counts as well.
It is. And it's meant to do that because it becomes a buzzword and it's a divisive tool. You could talk Brexit, you could talk Republicans, Democrats. I don't care where you are. If you got a parliamentary system, they are designed to fight. They're designed to get you on their side. Their job is to try to team build. And the reality is that we are all on the same team. I want to be healthy, Kris. I'm not worried about being wealthy. I just want to be able to have what I need when I need it. And I want to be smart. I can't plan for everything. You just can't. Sometimes we can do our best to try to prevent something. As you know, you can eat well. Maybe you'll prevent cancer, but it's not an end-all, cure-all. Sometimes people will just get cancer. Well, it's the same thing with the markets. It's the same thing with all of the hyperbole. You just got to be careful with what information you're willing to absorb into your body, and then how you're going to use that information, whether it's not going to be it's going to be healthy to your outcome, or if you understand that it's toxic and you can kick it aside.
Yeah, for sure. I always say to people, like, based on the decisions on the food that you eat today, you're either going to heal your future or harm your future. Yeah. It's exactly the same within the financial world as well. Those decisions really make count.
Yeah, that's right.
So I wanted to ask now, what is the best approach for people getting started now and taking advantage of the near-term volatility and the long-term growth of the market now? What should people do?
There's some things I think that you can do simultaneously. One is you got to flip the lights on. It's time. If you don't understand it, then don't start getting into it. Start working on education. There are several great investing websites out there. I would encourage people to use websites that are free, such as investopedia.com. In fact, that's one website I have pulled up every time I do a radio show. I've been doing that for 20 years. I know their website well. They've got training tools there for you to better understand how the markets themselves work, maybe efficiencies as far as account titles, tax efficiencies, things like that. You can find it on Investopedia. And then planning. Whether or not you need somebody to hold your hand through the planning process or you can do it on your own. There are several great planning websites out there. I'm not going to tell you that mine's the best because there are several good ones out there. Look at websites like Right Capital or even Mint provides a good planning service. If you need somebody else to manage your money for you, you might look at Wealthfront or Betterment, things like that. If you're not going to be able to push the button like I had said, they're going to be a little bit more expensive, but that's just it. We're going to figure it out, right? So what's the best way? Education, go through the planning, then invest. As far as identifying good opportunities out in the market, you don't want to buy the stocks that are the most beaten up. You want to buy stocks that you think are going to recover at the end of this. Take, for example, airlines. I don't know about the airlines, but I do know that back in the gold rush years in California in 1840s, that those who supplied the shovels did a lot better than those who were actually digging through the dirt. So maybe consider not the airlines themselves, but maybe the manufacturers of who provides those airlines with planes, because some of these airlines will be consolidated. Some will go bankrupt. Some of the other ones will buy them, and then it will be revived 5, 6, 10 years down the road. You're probably going to thank yourselves for actually investing in the shovels of the industry instead of the actual airlines themselves, because we don't know which ones are going to survive.
Yeah, interesting. Now, I noticed that you didn't plug yourself there. Are you taking on clients at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, we are. My firm is an SEC registered investment advisory firm. I can take a client in any state, anywhere across the United States, but not outside of the United States unless you're a U.S. citizen. We will find the best fit for you. In every case, we're a fiduciary. We don't sell any products, no insurance. We don't sell any stocks or mutual funds or things like that. We do money management, but only as a fiduciary. So that term fiduciary means in your best interest. We have to learn a lot about you. We take you through a planning process. And then if there's assets there for us to manage, we would suggest that we do that. If you want us to do that, great. If you don't, then we'll teach you how to leave us. Not very many firms will do that. We just believe very strongly in education and making sure that planning component's done first.
Right. Okay. So even though you are here in Boise, the majority of your clients are probably that you work with are remote.
Well, actually, the majority of our clients are in the Idaho area. However, I do that radio program out in Fresno, California. So we're picking up clients out there. This coronavirus thing, we sent all of our employees home about a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago. That forced us to learn how to work remotely. And I have been trying to plan this out on weekends of how am I going to pick up clients out in other markets and still do a fantastic job for them. Well, when you send home all your employees and they're now working with technology and all of the meetings that you do are now via video, just like this one, well, there's the silver lining right there. This has been a conundrum for me for many years now. In fact, about 19. I even did a national show at one point, couldn't figure out a great way to take on those clients. But guess what? The silver lining just fixed that, and we're now ahead of the curve. We can take clients from anywhere.
Interesting. Fascinating. Okay. So should people want to contact you or look at the software that you've got, I'll put the links in the show notes, of course, but I know there's going to be a lot of people in their car or whatever listening to this while they're doing their cardio. Could you let us know some links where people could come and search for you, Brian? Sure.
I think the best link for you is to go to one of the radio show websites. Listen to the podcast. You can better understand the topics that I cover, my opinions, how I believe in things. You can go to therealmoneypros.com or therealmoneypro.com. Either one, listen to the archives. You're going to learn a lot more about me, what I believe. I have a very specific approach. In fact, I hate to say it, but I've got a very strong opinion about my industry. I am going to change my industry. I'm leaving my mark on it. I am looking for certain regulatory changes. I'm still influential in this. I'm in my zen, I'll tell you that. And so the software that we talked about, freedomfolios.com and investu.com. But if you're going to use Investu, you've got to go to a subdomain. It's treecity.investu.com. Again, I'm just the first licensee for some software we created. Eventually, I think there'll be many advisors out there that would like to send self-directed investors out there, be able to have the ability to help them through that. And then my company website is treecityadvisors.com. That's TREECITYADVISORS.com. And that's where our fiduciary website is. And you can read more about us. But I got to tell you, Kris, there's really not a lot that can replace a face-to-face meeting, especially through the planning phase. What I've learned over years is that people just like me, I've taken an IQ test, I've taken the SET, and I learned how they wrote those tests. So I learned how to answer the questions that I knew that they wanted the answers for. And a lot of times having a face-to-face meeting with an advisor, they can read body language, see the way that you're answering the question, and maybe provide more customized advice for you when it's face-to-face like that. So while I'm not trying to discourage people from using us, I'm just telling you that I'm not the only great advisor out in this nation. There are many of them. You just want to search them. Best thing to ever do when you're looking for a good advisor is to research them. You can go to industry websites such as investor.gov, that's operated by the SEC. You want to pull up that advisor's name. You want to see if they've got any disclosures or if they've done any bad things. The trend is your friend. If they've got a lot of red dots on their report, read them. Figure out who's made complaints, what were the findings of those complaints, and stay away from that person if you think that you might just become their next complaint. And then the other one is FINRA, FINRA.org. That's the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. They used to be the NASD and the New York Stock Exchange. They combined. That regulatory organization also keeps information on all advisors. And if you want to just put in an advisor or in a broker's name, try mine. It's Brian James Wiley. Very simple, Wiley. You'll notice I don't have any red dots yet. I hope to never have one, but there you have it. Research. Yeah, research. Fantastic. There's a lot that goes into it, I can see. But this has been fascinating
Brian, as I mentioned to all the listeners at the beginning, this is something that everybody can benefit from. Sometimes I'll have guests on and we'll talk about hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Well, that's not going to be relatable to everybody. But if we're going to talk about sleep, for instance, or financial, advisory or planning or investing, then this involves everybody. So thank you ever so much for your time. As I mentioned, I will put everything into the show notes. I do suggest that everybody listen to Brian's radio show. I've bookmarked a couple of episodes here, especially when it came to investing in real estate. So it's an absolute phenomenal research.
You're bringing up another great point right there too, Kris. And I really appreciate you saying that. A good financial advisor really doesn't care what you invest in, whether you're investing in stocks, bonds, rental properties, real estate. It doesn't matter. They're going to get paid either way. Make sure you stay away from advisors that have other licenses that enable them to sell products. You want to make sure you remove that conflict from their advice. You don't want them getting paid for selling you some sort of an insurance product like an annuity or life insurance contract if it's tied to the planning that they had done for you. I write it more like a prescription and say, here, go out and get this filled. There's some great brokers out there that will find the products that you're looking for, but you don't want me getting compensated for such a thing. Let's make sure that when we learn this, that we digest it in pieces that we can actually absorb. I mean, how many bites does it take to eat an elephant? Well, it takes the first one, and then it's going to be many more after that. So education is the number one thing, planning number two, research your advisors, but every single person out there has the need to have financial well-being. Otherwise, you cannot have a complete circle of health and spiritual and good friendships and all that goes with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's for that financial freedom that we're after. Even though we'll never retire, I can't see that I'll ever retire myself, but having the option to would be nice,
Yeah, well, you know what? You'll be forced to retire at someday. That's where we are. At some point, you're going to be too old to work, and you've got to know what your resources are going to be. Otherwise, you're going to be living with your kids and your grandkids. And maybe that's acceptable to you, but it's nice to not need somebody, instead to want them. Choose to live with them. Don't have to live with them. You can actually plan this ahead of time. And if you're in this part of your life right now where you're trying to improve your health, improve your financial health as well, you can do it at the same time. It doesn't take that much effort.
Yeah, especially, and if you're an athlete or if you're a personal trainer and, you are reliant upon your physical well-being, sometimes something could happen. Like you could crash on your mountain bike and next thing you know, you don't have an income for a while. So it does definitely make it worthwhile to invest in the future and all possible eventualities.
Yeah. And it's learning who your team of experts is. Kris, I'm sorry. Kris, the first person I reached out to because I have a chronic knee injury, to talk about stem cells, it's you. Now, are you necessarily the end-all, be-all expert in stem cells? No, but you know the people who are. And it's the same thing in my industry. Am I a tax expert? No, but I know the people who are. Do I understand business law, corporate law? Yeah, enough to get you to the right pro. That's the whole thing, is trust your advice and allow that advisor to not be the end-all, be-all for everything, because nobody knows everything. I think it's one of those things where if you don't understand this, just reach out to somebody you trust and start the advice. They may not be the person you'll use forever. And as time goes on, you might become more sophisticated than your first advisor, and it's time to leave them at that point.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we've just scratched the surface here.
Oh, yeah.
But luckily, you've got a radio show so people can dig deeper into a lot more of this information. But Brian, thank you ever so much for giving us your time, because I know after speaking to you, you are crazy, hectic, busy at the moment. So I'll let you.
It's been nuts.
Your clients. Yeah. So this has been a nice break for you.
Yeah, it's been a nice break. Thanks for taking my mind away from this a little bit. It's a good thing. I'm not too scared of anything, to be honest with you. I don't actually tie myself up and worry. I just will face something the day that it comes up. But right now we're facing this. It's keeping my industry extremely busy. We do thank all of our healthcare professionals that are also busy, all of our first responders. I want people to understand the commitments that these people have had. But we all signed up for this. I chose this career. I'm not complaining about how busy it is. I'm not going to complain about the phone calls or the emails. If you need help, reach out. I'll get you the resource. That's okay. I can triage emails. But let's lean on the advice and let's go through this as a community.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better. No way. Not impossible. But thank you ever so much, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Likewise.
And that is today's episode of the Knowledge and Mileage podcast, everybody. If you did like this episode, which I know you did, please subscribe and leave a review in the comments box. Thank you ever so much, and we will speak to you next week.